Board. Games. Board games. Episode 970. Board games. The wrong number was written by me. So I'm quickly editing it live. I hope you won't think that sucky things have arrived. I'll talk about synergy. Hopefully, come up with some definitions that will be at least working somewhat relatively okay and good enough for you and for me. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. 10 a.m. is UK time for Busy Beats and Board Game Blether, episode 970. What helps you focus? Wait, that's not the thing at all. It's episode 970. What is synergy? We're talking about, what is synergy? So this topic was inspired by Manuel Carrera and was something that, I'm working on a deck construction game for those who don't know. Here is some of the cards for my deck construction game. I will show you. And the idea is, like, obviously these are just hand-drawn. These are all little contraption modules. There's a creature module because it's got an eye and a hand, but you can tell it's a creature module because of the two lines. And then on the other side, it's got a little spell. 2 triangles for each eye on your live creatures, draw 1. And they're doing little things. Hands are grabbing, mouths are attacking and defending themselves. And this is a contraption that costs 1 circle to run. Now, when you're at the core of a deck construction game is constructing your deck before the game. You see all the available cards and you think, what has synergy? Now, in a game like that's a pre-constructed thing, or during a draft, there is real value in having some cards that are clearly better than others. Look at Sushi Go. I mean, obviously, this is very much on the light side, but in Sushi Go, you've got your different types of what sort of, like the nigiri, that's the one. You've got the squid, which is worth 3 points. Yeah, it's brilliant. And then the salmon, which is 2 points, because apparently not as many people like it. Although in reality, I feel like salmon nigiri is one of the most popular. And then I think the vegetable is just 1 point. And clearly, if you're choosing between those things, the squid nigiri is the one to get. And frankly, often the squid nigiri is just the best choice out of your entire hand, even when you're considering the pudding, which could be worth 6 points theoretically, or the maki rolls, or everything. And having these clearly superior choices kind of gives people a reason to feel like, I've made a good choice. I've got some confidence. I'm definitely not making the worst choice. This is 1 point. This is 2 points. This is 3 points. It's simple. I understand it. And there's something lovely about that simplicity. Sorry, I'm distracted by my face. I've got like little marks. Hopefully they'll go away. But yes. So having stuff that is clearly superior is sometimes a great thing for drafting games. But then when it comes to actual deck construction, once you've got your card pool, I think that it's better if you look at it all in terms of synergy. And what does that mean? Well, my working definition right now is things that are greater than the sum of their parts when combined, or I should say, things that become more powerful when used together. That's how I'm going to go for it right now. But let's take a step back and talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights. Yesterday I managed to finish all the drawings. It was much later than I had planned, but I got them all posted to Jack and they should be arriving within like 3 hours. And so that's exciting. And so a game about seriously surreal creatures and trying to identify them after some mixed noises is on the way. And then the rest of the evening from like 5 o'clock onwards, I just lazed around, by which I mean I walked around the park, which was lovely, seeing the sunshine, going slowly to the docks, coming back, I cooked myself a stir fry, also bought myself strawberries, which leads me to brilliant thing, what's the little thing which is brilliant? Strawberries are brilliant, but I don't just want to talk about strawberries. I want to talk about mindfulness when eating. I mean, whether it's with a cracker or with a piece of fruit, I mean, let me turn on the lamp if I can. Okay, there's the lamp. Now, let's look at this strawberry. So, I mean, the pips aren't really yellow. They're kind of a very lime, almost green. And then, like, there's so much shining. And as you move it around, like, the patterns are amazing. And then you bite into it. Oh my gosh. There's, like, a fractal pattern on the inside, like a starburst. And you feel the crunch, the texture against your teeth, and just slowing down to really appreciate this. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of that strawberry later on. I mean, that's just too hot for TV. But no, the brilliant thing is being mindful when you're eating, not just like scoffing stuff, because sometimes I'm guilty of that as well. Just being like, yeah, I've got lots of stuff, but smaller portions, and like just enjoying it, taking the time, slowing down. I think there's something wonderful in that, because I am sometimes guilty of just getting as much in my face and then not such. I mean, I'm not talking about the quantity of eating. I'm not saying eat less necessarily. I'm just saying slow down your eating. Yeah, and enjoy it, because there's this thing of there's this pressure to be constantly productive. So yeah, sometimes slow down and just gaze at the strawberry and be like, wow, isn't that beautiful? And then take a bite, and it's like just feeling the variance in the softness. Like fruits are brilliant for that. Like real, I mean, yeah, fruit. But yeah, also mindfulness while eating. Anyway, as always, comment, ask questions, fun, like, follow. If you're watching, whether live or after the fact, what do you think is synergy? Let me know if you agree or disagree with what I'm saying. Someone, when I was talking about my deck construction game, suggested that I should put little marks on cards to denote like certain synergies. Like, hey, and at that point, am I not kind of saying, hey, if you're making a deck based on this thing, include all of these cards, which is kind of limiting people. It's kind of stopping people from discovering that themselves. I mean, look, if I've got a card that says for every eye on your creatures, then you get to draw a card. And that's the spell side, and it says, hey, for every eye on your creatures, draw a card. That's not what this one says. But imagine if it did. Then obviously you want a lot of creatures with many eyes. You want to have all the eyes that you can have theoretically, but then you start asking, well, how many eyes do I want? Maybe there's more potential eyes than you really need in your deck. Maybe 7 cards with eyes is actually the correct number, so that's like just over a third of your deck. And maybe you're thinking, well, there's 10 cards now, I'm thinking which ones, but that's a clear example of synergy, which I would argue has almost been put in there as a very blunt instrument from the designer. Now, there's no such thing as synergistic or not synergistic. I don't think it's a binary. I think it's more of a continuum. Let's imagine that, actually, let's stick with my own game. So there's 5 castles, right? And assume that you have decided you're not going to bother attacking with creatures. You're just going to use your creatures for defense and block their creatures, and then you're going to build up lots of resources until you have the resources to finally launch the spell to crush their castles directly. Now, imagine if you've got a lot of cards that say destroy 2 castles. well, that means that you've got to cast 3 of them before you destroy, and that means that the last one is kind of half wasted. And if you've got a spell that says destroy 3 castles, then that's kind of synergistic with the destroy 2, because obviously 2 plus 3 equals 5, and you know your opponent has 5 castles, so that itself is a maybe marginally less obvious example of what I would call synergy. And it does depend a lot on the random draw. You can't just say, well, I'm going to put all of these and all of these, because maybe you draw all the 3 castles, and then you start thinking, well, if I've got my spell with destroy 4 castles, maybe I want the ones that destroy 1 castle, or maybe I want this one that does variable castles, because the one that does variable castles, then that's got adaptability, which is kind of, if you've got 2 things with adaptability, I would say that's almost less synergistic than 1 thing with adaptability and 1 thing that's fixed. Because if that 1 thing is fixed, presumably you're paying less for it, because adaptability always comes at a price. And then with that, the more adaptable one can kind of mold itself around the less adaptable one. So if you've got a bunch of things, again, let's assume that you're trying to destroy your opponent's castle without any creatures, which, for the record, might not be the best strategy in my game, but it's a viable deck. It's a viable deck. So you grab a mixture of the adaptable things and the ones with fixed numbers, because then you're thinking, well, if I get the adaptable one, then that's going to be better in the context that I will see what the game state is at that point. And so it's more synergistic with, yeah, with situations that you might have to adapt to. Now, synergy is kind of feeling like, okay, tools are to be used for different purposes. I mean, you could argue that, like, look, a screwdriver is synergistic with a screw, like a hammer is synergistic with a nail. I mean, you could use a screw as a nail and it would just kind of make a bigger hole. And but no, that's not the best use of, I mean, hammer and screw is like a terrible combo. I mean, and screwdriver and nail is even worse. Yeah. I mean, at least hammer and screw if the screws fit. Anyway, but back to games. The point is that some tools do combine perfectly and only with something else. Like the screwdriver can only be used with a screw because it's turning. Conversely, some things like the hammer could be used with a nail, but if you've got screws, then the hammer can sort of use that, and it's still going to be used for the correct end result. And for me, it's kind of like, what's is synergy? At what point do you say these things are synergistic, and no, these things are not? I mean, some things actively work against each other, and I've heard the term non-bo as opposed to combo. I mean, if you've got a combo, it's like a 1-2 punch. Like you do this thing that has worked together and it's become really awesome. And a non-bo would be like one card that tells you sacrifice all your creatures. You get draw 1 card for each one, and then another card that says sacrifice all your creatures. You deal 1 damage for each one. I mean, that's a non-bo, because if you've sacrificed all your creatures to one effect, then you're going to have fewer creatures to sacrifice for the other. It's probable that you only want like fewer cards of these than the pieces to sacrifice. I mean, what is the real combo there would be the cheap stuff, like creatures which are really rubbish but cost hardly anything. Maybe there's a card that you play 1 card and then it gives you multiple creatures, all sorts of things. That's the real combo to go for. And is it true to then say all the sacrificing cards are synergistic with stuff like that? Would it be true to say in my game, my deck construction game, which instead of sacrificing stuff, you're normally detaching it and it goes back into your hands? Would it be fine to say, okay, detaching cards and nubbins, which are the super quick things, and stuff that allows you to attach multiple things to one creature in a turn, or maybe multiple creature bases? Is that synergistic? I think so. And there's a lot of variants. I mean, it's interesting to think about. There's sometimes something called tags in cards. I mean, imagine a card that said, for every cow that you've got, you gain a milk token. That then assumes that other cards are going to have the tag of cow. Now, cow maybe doesn't mean anything on its own. Similar to in my game, eyes don't mean anything. They're just a tag that, hey, sometimes you get one eye, sometimes you get, can I show you? Yeah, this card doesn't have any eyes at all. It's just a little mouth and a hand. Conversely, this one over here is just one mouth, but it has two eyes. And is that better? Would you rather have two eyes, or would you rather have a hand? Well, in the game, as it happens, hands let you steal, so that's clearly better, unless you've got a lot of cards that then use the tag. Because the tag, in this case, the eyes, are only there as a thing to be referenced by other cards, in the same way that in other games, it might have a bit of text there that says things like, for every vampire that you have, or for every bottle of tomato juice that you have, you get one nutritional point. That second example is not a real game, but it totally should be. I mean, I think that, yeah, someone make a... We want more games about food and more games about red food as well. Well, I do. Anyway, so what was I saying? Yes, so you've got your tags, and then you've got the cards that use the tags, and it's only because of the cards that uses the tags that clearly that's a synergy that's been baked in by the designer. I mean, there's no way that that was an accident. But when you've got, hey, deal 2 damage to the castle, deal 3 damage to the castle, I mean, someone could design that without really thinking and understanding, you know what? That is synergistic. And my hope is that, sure, I understand that level of synergy, but maybe someone else understands a deeper level of synergy than I do. And at a certain level, you start thinking, oh, that, I could use that. But then if I use the other thing. And then there's also this thing about chains of synergy. Okay, let's go back to my example of detaching cards and getting an effect for it. So let's say there's cards that allow you to detach stuff from your own creatures, and if you do that, you get, well, you could get anything. You could deal damage, you could detach stuff from your opponent's creatures, you could draw extra cards, you could gain resources, whatever. And so if you've got a bunch of these cards in your deck, if you want to build around that, how would you do that? Well, I'm thinking I want to get as much stuff on my creatures that I don't mind being detached. So again, how do I do that? Now, in my game, you can only attach one thing to one base. So this is a base, this is a contraption as it happens, but you can attach one thing or run it. You can't attach two things unless, of course, you play a spell that allows you to attach multiple things. I mean, like all deck construction games, basically all the rules can be broken by other cards. So are you going to go for multiple bases so that every turn you can attach multiple stuff? Because if you've got 3 creatures, you can attach 3 nubbins for nothing. Just put them from your hand down there, because like a nubbin costs literally nothing. Or you could have something like that, which is just expanding the creature and costs literally nothing because it doesn't have any bits. And this is just a hand and it costs only 1 resource. And so you could do that. Focus on the lots of bases, focus on the cheap creatures, Alternatively, rather than doing lots of bases, maybe you focus on a spell which allows you to accelerate the rate at which you attach stuff. Like I said, normally you can only attach one thing to each base a turn, but there are cards that say things like, okay, you can attach any number to one of your creatures this turn, or you can, and there's all sorts of other examples, but that's a real card currently in the game. I can't remember what it costs, but it's a real card. And so with that, you could have one creature that you just grow and make very big, and using that card, then you've got like almost a 2-card combo, because all your pieces are hopefully useful anyway, and then you can play that, and then play the stuff that detaches the things, and then play another card that allows you to attach lots, and then play, and that's clearly synergy. But it's kind of like a chain where, or a padlock where there's multiple keys to use. So do you go the multiple bases route, or do you go the, I'm going to speed up my laying down of these attachments route? And that's the kind of synergy that I really like, where you probably don't want to do both of them. I mean, if you've got lots of bases, you probably don't need to also accelerate your stuff. And so you've then, even if once you've made your mind, I'm going to go with the detachment strategy, now there's multiple ways to lean into that detachment strategy. Do I go all the bases, or do I go accelerating my own attachments? And yeah, how hard do you want to lean into the cheap attachments? Do I go for all the attachments that cost literally nothing, and then I'll get mana back, and then I'll get my resources back, or cards or whatever when I detach them, and I'm like, haha, I'm totally up now, and then I put them down? Or do I go for something with a bit more utility, that it's going to be less good in this one instance, but then it's generally got a bit more utility in a more abstract sense? And I think that brings me to what, in a sense, good cards design is, because I think that everything should be some degree balanced. I mean, I'm trying to do this rather than this, because it's like, what is balance? And everyone agrees, like, it is about the perception. It's about being something that, yeah, and there's arguments against it, but I absolutely agree with, yeah, it's more about the perception. But more to the point, if you're trying to decide between something with general utility, but then it's slightly better in this instance, or something with more general utility, but it's worse, like, everything wants to be, by making things shine in different scenarios, you are allowing there to be more game pieces, more cards, more tiles, more whatever, that are, in theory, kind of equal in power. But then it comes to a decision of, what scenario am I likely to encounter in this game? What scenario am I building my deck around? What scenario? And obviously, synergy is basically only relevant to the player when you're choosing your pieces, whether that's before the game even starts, like a deck construction game, or whether that's during the game, like a deck building, hand building, bag building, whatever game, or drafting. It could also be a drafting game. But I mean, yeah, there's absolutely synergies in, like, Sushi Go as like an example. I mean, of course, if you are doing well in Pudding, you want to continue to maintain your lead, but everything is situational, and that's the key point. Like, if I'm playing a 2-player game and I've got 4 Pudding and my opponent has 0, neither of us care about Pudding anymore, because you only get points for having the most Pudding, or in 3 players you lose points for the least. But look, the point is that if it's tight, if I have 2 Puddings and they have 1 Pudding, maybe puddings aren't the most important thing, but then if I discover there's only one pudding left in the card pool, well, that one pudding is worth 6 points, basically. So I need to either get it and maintain my lead, or if they get it, then now it's all equal, and then I'm a bit sad. Well, I guess we've spent the same number of cards, but... And similarly, there's other stuff that's even more clearly, okay, you need to get this, like the sashimi, which is very clearly, if you've got 3, it's 10. If you've got 1 or 2, it's nothing. And by giving things situational advantage, you allow for these kinds of decisions. You allow for the mind games. You allow for people for weird situations to arise. And I mean, I had an amazing game of Sushi Go where I was thinking, okay, I've got the chopsticks, which allows me to take 2 cards. Do I take both the 5s, which gives me 5 points, or do I get 2 of the sashimi? But then if I only take 1 of the sashimi, then my opponent... And like, you get into all not every game, but a good portion of the games come up with, wow, this is a thing that I've never thought about. And I'm not just thinking about what I'm doing, but I'm thinking about what the opponents will do. And I'm thinking about what might go into their deck. I'm thinking about what they might pull out of their hand. I'm thinking about how to combat them. And yes, as I said at the start, there's massive value in having the obvious choices in a drafting game, in a game where you want people to be able to make somewhat easy decisions. I mean, like, in a game which has hundreds and hundreds of cards, having a draft during your pre-release event and then having some of the cards be worse than other things, it means that people are like, okay, that's what I'm going to start off. It's pushing you down a particular avenue. But it's by having the synergies, it's by having the things that are less obvious in what they do. And I don't think that synergy, let me actually start off recapping and wrapping up. Yeah, I don't think that synergy is a clear-cut thing. I don't think it's something just to be put in by the designer. I think that it's something that there is emergent synergy. That is such a thing, like the different numbers adding up to the total amounts of damage that you want to deal, for example, as I said at the start. So, question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. My question of the day to you is, do you like strawberries? Do you like them? I mean, they're a lovely color. I mean, look at that red, and they're shiny, and they have like so many enticing patterns around them. And there's, I don't know, good amounts of sweetness, and I love strawberries. Not every strawberry, but these strawberries are particularly good. How do you feel about strawberries? Over to you. What's up to? You can share button if you want to. Is there something that you want to do, something that you need to do? Please share. I promise I care. Yeah, what's you up to today? Genuinely, I am curious. I'm curious what kind of people are watching and what you're generally up to. Or I am going to, I've not been outside yet, so I'm going to make sure that I get outside to the park. It's kind of cloudy. It looks like it's probably going to rain. I guess I better get outside soon before it does rain. I'm also going to do a lot of art. I'm going to try to draw a lot of letter shapes. Yeah, that's probably going to be me until the wee hours of tonight. I'm going to be drawing a lot of, yeah, just, I mean, only 26 letters. That's all I'm doing. I mean, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet, plus 6 backgrounds, like for the suits, and 5 numbers. But then I'll also do the 26 letters a second time for the little indices on the cards. And then I'll send them off to someone to turn into the final deck of Categorical. And that's really exciting. Mike, hello, Mike. Need to finish prototyping, getting that ready for UK Games Expo. Yes, I was told that I needed to have all my stuff ready by tomorrow if I want it to be printed, because obviously I'm getting stuff, well, not obviously, but I am getting some stuff put into boxes, and a long overdue categorical, yep, I'm hoping to, but, you know, I got that deadline hoping to get it ready by Herefordshire Gamers, so even if it's a little bit late, it will be better than not at all. So yes, but we are both getting stuff ready for UK Games Expo. Solidarity! Hooray! And yes, recap and wrap up before we finish up. So to recap and wrap up, synergy, I mean, this applies to everything, and I've realized it more and more in the past few years. Thank you very much, Jeff Engelstein, for introducing me to the idea of fuzzy logic as, you know, when you consider whether a person is tall or not, for example, and then Jeff Engelstein made the argument that that kind of fuzzy logic can be applied to games and definitions and all sorts of things. And I agree with that things are more synergistic or less synergistic. And I think that, you know, the blunt instrument definitely has its place, and you want some of that bluntness sometimes to help guide the players, but you also want some of that less blunt stuff to be like, hey, you discovered this. Whether it was there by design, whether you thought about it or you didn't, you don't want that to be, I don't believe I want that to be an obvious, this is what Bears thought about, this is what Bears didn't think about. And it's not as if one card is synergistic with one other card. Like one card could be synergistic with like these bunch of things for this reason, and these bunch of things for another reason, and these bunch of things for another reason that might not be entirely obvious. And then even some other things for reasons that I've not thought about. And so I don't think that, and this whole show came about because someone suggested, how about you put little icons to guide people towards what is synergistic? And so, yeah, my real question of the day, is like how you would feel about that. And I feel like that's just railroading people too much. And yeah, but I did appreciate the thoughts and input, and I don't mean to have a go at the designer who mentioned this. And even if I don't end up using the idea, thank you very much for sharing it. But like, that's me wrapping up. That synergy is there to allow players to discover things, and synergy allows things to have so much more emergent depth. And I believe that most things will have some degree of synergy, but like sometimes it's just incredibly weak synergy at the point where you're feeling, what's the point in me even exploring this? Because it's like a lot of trick-taking games, frankly, where, I mean, there's differences like Wizard, you need to be really good or you will fail. Same with Oh Hell. But like Hearts, I feel like I've gotten to the point where, sure, I could spend years learning the game and learning all the perfect things, but then my win percentage would maybe go up by like 2%, and I'm not going to have necessarily more fun doing it. But like discovering something with, yeah, a bit more synergy than like, okay, because of that. Synergy is kind of like a puzzle to solve. Synergy is kind of saying, hey, you don't just do random things. Things are not good or bad in isolation. Things are good or bad in context. And that's the thing. Like, synergy is about appreciating that context matters more, I guess. But yeah, what do you think? I hope that this has been useful to you. If it has, then please share, spread the word. And I really appreciate everyone who's like, thank you to people like, I saw Cardboard Edison shared one of the previous things. Like, obviously, I absolutely love that. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you, whether you're just lurking or chatting along. And if you want to check me out, I am Stuff by Bez in all of the places, on Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the places, and also Board Game Arena. And if you want to join my Discord, stuffbybez.com/Discord. Tomorrow, I'm having Alan Paul on. We are talking about, I think we'll be talking about a type of auction. Can't remember. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be so tired tomorrow. It'll be fine. But yes. for now. And then I'm having Kirsten Lunde on Thursday, and we're going. Kirsten did have a topic. I think it was. I'm sure, or to sleep. All I'm going to say is bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. Now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye. Bye, bye, everyone.